At 2:47 a.m., a terrifying discovery echoed through the halls of the Kremlin. The impossible had become real. But wait, before revealing what really went down that night, let me ask you something that's going to totally change how you see this whole conflict. Can you even imagine what it means to wake up in the capital of a nuclear superpower and find out the sky is literally falling on your head? That all the airports are shut down, the internet stops working, and emergency sirens are blasting through the silence like crazy? Now imagine this isn't some movie or a military drill or a nightmare. It actually happened. A historic event in Russia that didn't sit well with Putin. And what you're about to find out will show why experts all over the world are calling the early hours of July 17th, 2025, the day that changed everything. Because that night, something everyone thought was impossible not only happened, but happened in such a wild way that we're still trying to figure out all the fallout. Are you ready to discover how an apparently innocent phone call between two presidents sparked the boldest military operation in the last 50 years? To fully get how big this moment was, we gotta rewind a few days. At the end of June 2025, a phone call between American President Donald Trump and Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky got leaked to the international press. During that call, Trump asked a question that sounded almost like a taunt. Could you really hit Moscow and Saint Petersburg if you wanted to? This wasn't just about military tech. It was a sly way to test the limits of Ukraine's military muscle. Trump, who'd promised to end the conflict within 50 days of taking office, was clearly frustrated by the slow progress in peace talks. His words echoed through the halls of power in Kyiv as an unspoken challenge. What made this even more intriguing was the timing. Just 2 weeks earlier, Trump himself had revealed in a private recording that during his previous presidency, he'd threatened Putin by saying he'd bomb Moscow if Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, back in power, he seemed to be testing if Ukraine actually had that capability. The answer came in a way no military analyst saw coming. When the first signs showed up on Russian radars around 2 a.m. on July 17th, the air defense operators at first thought it was just another strike on the border regions. After all, those kinds of operations had become routine in recent weeks. What they didn't expect was what came next: a massive swarm of 143 drones flying in coordinated patterns, launching multiple attack waves. The first wave hit Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk, areas already acting as Russia's frontline defense. About half of the drones got shot down by Pantsir and S-400 air defense systems, lighting up the night sky in a deadly fireworks show that locals filmed by the dozens. The videos quickly went viral on social media, showing chain explosions lighting up the horizon like deadly fireworks. But the real surprise was yet to come. While the Russian defenses were busy fighting off that first wave, other drone groups managed to sneak deeper into Russian territory, using alternate routes carefully mapped by Ukrainian intelligence. In Moscow, 3 drones made it to the western suburbs of the capital. The first got taken down over Zvenigorod, a historic town just 60 kilometers from downtown. The second was shot near Istra, sparking a fire that brought out 3 firefighting teams. The third got even closer, destroyed over Zelenograd, a tech hub known as the Russian Silicon Valley. At the same time, Saint Petersburg faced its own tense night. Explosions were reported near Pulkovo Airport, the main air gateway to the former imperial capital. The close call forced authorities to temporarily suspend all flights, leaving thousands stuck at the terminal. But behind all the military stats and impressive numbers of drones intercepted, there's always the most tragic part of any conflict: civilian casualties. In Belgorod, one of the frontline cities of Russia's defense, a 52-year-old man died when debris from a downed drone hit his home. 6 others were injured in the same area, including a 34-year-old woman who was just coming back from her night shift. The city of Voronezh, about 500 kilometers south of Moscow, saw one of the most heartbreaking moments of the night. A drone shot down by air defenses lost control and crashed into a 5-story apartment building. 3 kids sleeping nearby got hurt, 2 aged 8 and 12, and 1 just 5 years old. Luckily, none had serious injuries, but the psychological trauma left deep scars on the families involved. In Kaluga and Smolensk, 2 other hit regions, a 14-year-old girl was hospitalized after being hit by metal fragments. She was stable, but the incident shows how modern combat tech still puts innocent civilians at risk. These numbers, while relatively low compared to other recent attacks in the conflict, mark a serious leap in Ukraine's ability to project military power right into Russia's heart. Russia's government reacted immediately and in several ways, showing both the strengths and limits of its defense systems. The Russian Ministry of Defense publicly claimed they successfully shot down all 143 drones using a mix of air defense systems spread across 11 regions. But the reality told a more complicated story. While most drones were indeed neutralized, several managed to get far inside Russian airspace, some less than 50 kilometers from central Moscow. This forced the Kremlin to take emergency steps not seen since the early days of the conflict. The harshest move was temporarily cutting off mobile internet and Wi-Fi services in 60 Russian regions. Officially, this was to stop remote drone control via network connections, a tactic Ukraine had developed to guide their unmanned aircraft to specific targets. In practice, this revealed a critical weakness in Russia's infrastructure and caused serious disruption for millions of ordinary citizens. Imagine trying to call your family during an emergency and finding no signal, or getting to work and realizing all the online systems are down. That's what a big part of the Russian population went through for nearly 6 hours that night, creating a feeling of isolation and vulnerability not felt in decades. Moscow's airports, Sheremetyevo, Domodedovo, and Vnukovo, stayed closed for about 4 hours, canceling 47 domestic and international flights. In St. Petersburg, Pulkovo Airport only resumed operations after a full security check that took almost 5 hours. What made this attack especially important wasn't just its size, but the technological sophistication shown by the Ukrainian forces. The drones used included a mix of long-range models, including the Ludiy, which means fierce in Ukrainian, a drone made specifically for deep penetration missions. The Ludiy marks an impressive tech leap for Ukraine's defense industry. With a range up to 1,000 kilometers and the ability to carry 15 kilos of explosives, these drones are built to bypass Russian defenses. They fly at relatively low altitudes, use materials that reduce their radar signature, and operate in coordinated swarms that overwhelm enemy defenses. But maybe the most impressive part of the operation was how well it was coordinated. Western intelligence sources said the drones were launched from at least 6 different spots in Ukraine, following carefully calculated routes to boost their chances of breaking through. Some groups took more direct paths to draw Russian defenses, while others took longer, sneaky routes to avoid main air defense systems. Pulling off an operation this complex shows not just Ukraine's tech progress, but a major boost in their military planning and operational coordination. Beyond the physical damage and practical disruptions, this attack hit deep psychologically for both the Russian population and the wider geopolitical scene. For many Russians, especially in Moscow and Saint Petersburg, the conflict had felt distant, something happening out there near the borders. The arrival of drones over the country's 2 biggest cities flipped that perception overnight. Public opinion polls after the attack showed a big jump in anxiety among urban Russians, with many reporting sleep troubles and a growing feeling of vulnerability. For Ukraine, the operation was a huge psychological win. It showed the world, and more importantly the Ukrainian people themselves, that the country could take the fight right to the aggressor's doorstep, as one anonymous Ukrainian military official put it. This shift in the conflict's psychological dynamics also had big international effects. Security analysts in Washington, London, and other Western capitals began rethinking how long the conflict might last and what its outcomes could be. If Ukraine could hit Moscow, the rules of the game had clearly changed. The July 17th attack wasn't a one-off event, but part of a sustained campaign that kept going in the following days. On the night of July 18th, new Ukrainian drones hit Russian territory again, mostly targeting the Moscow region. 4 unmanned aircraft were shot down in the capital suburbs, forcing another temporary airspace shut down. These persistent attacks showed a major shift in Ukraine's military strategy. Instead of hit-and-run strikes, Kyiv started using constant pressure, keeping Russian defenses on high alert and slowly wearing down both military resources and civilian morale. On the night of July 19th, a third wave hit not just Moscow but 5 other Russian regions, including Tver, Smolensk, and Yaroslavl. The pattern was clear. Ukraine had developed the ability to sustain long-range operations consistently, something many experts thought was impossible just months before. The international response to the attack was mixed and, in many ways, contradictory. Trump, whose chat with Zelensky apparently inspired the operation, initially avoided direct comments. But 3 days later, he announced a new military aid package for Ukraine, including long-range missile systems Kyiv had been asking for months. In a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Trump made a comment revealing his growing frustration with Putin. "My talks with him are very pleasant. Then the missiles start flying at night. It just keeps going on and on." This shift in tone toward Russia marked a big change in America's stance. Trump also set a 50-day ultimatum for Moscow to agree to peace talks, threatening to slap 100% secondary tariffs on Russian goods if they didn't comply. Russia's response was equally telling. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Russia wasn't impressed by American threats and was ready to respond appropriately to to Ukrainian attacks. But diplomatic sources said inside the Kremlin there was real concern about Ukraine's growing military sophistication. The July 17th attack is more than just a successful military operation. It signals a fundamental shift in 21st century warfare. The ability of small drones costing a few tens of thousands of dollars each to break through defense systems that cost billions shows how technology is democratizing military power. This reality has implications way beyond this conflict. Countries worldwide are watching how smaller nations can now project serious military force with relatively affordable tech. The era when only superpowers could threaten far-off centers of power is clearly ending. For Ukraine, the operation's success opened new strategic doors. Reports say Kyiv is considering a mega transfer of drone tech to the U.S. in exchange for even more advanced weapon systems, including next-gen fighters and long-range missiles. The escalation that kicked off on July 17th seems to have set a new standard for the conflict, with both sides showing capabilities that were unthinkable at the start. The big question now is, how far can this tech escalation go? If small drones can now hit nuclear superpower capitals, what other tech surprises are coming? And more importantly, is there still a real chance to de-escalate, or are we witnessing the birth of a new kind of conflict that might be the norm for the 21st century? The early hours of July 17th, 2025, will be remembered as a turning point, not just in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, but in the nature of modern military confrontation itself. When the first drones crossed the Russian sky heading for Moscow, they carried more than explosives. They carried the message that the old rules of geopolitical struggle had changed forever. The world that woke up that morning was different from the one that fell asleep the night before. A world where small nations can challenge superpowers, where tech can level historic military gaps, and where traditional power centers are no longer untouchable sanctuaries. The question hanging in the air isn't just about this specific conflict's future, but about what kind of world we're building. A world where tech can both democratize power and make it more dangerous and unpredictable than ever. If you want to keep following this historic transformation that's redefining global security rules, subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts on what you think will happen next, and share this video with anyone who still doesn't get the scale of the changes we're living through. Because here, info flies faster than any drone, and you always stay ahead of the stories shaping our future.